everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be diving into the new holiday collection from Dior. Now they launched several pieces in their holiday collection. I went ahead and only grabbed the two Quint eyeshadow palettes. They launched not only the two eyeshadow palettes, but they also launched a new blush, which is really, really beautiful, but I decided to pass on it. And then they also launched a beautiful lipstick set, gorgeous, but I decided I just did not need it, right? It's like being in this business, I can't buy every piece in every collection, and it's always hard to kind of decide like which ones to buy and which ones to pass on. So this was one of those decisions that I had to make, but I just went ahead and bought the two eyeshadow palettes. So we're going to dive right into it today. I'm going to share my thoughts with you guys, share a look with each one of the palettes, and also sharing swatches and comparisons of other palettes that I find that might be similar, which I think you guys might have these color combinations in other palettes. So we will get into that in the swatches and comparisons. And then after that, of course, we will get into my final thoughts. What are these palettes? They are so beautiful. This is called the Atelier of Dreams collection. Now, I might have botched that. I mean, I botched my fake tan last night, like completely botched it. My fake tan looks terrible. I was testing out a new fake tan, and this is always what happens, you guys. Anyway, so apparently I'm not only botching words now that I have a hard time pronouncing, but I'm botching my fake tan. There you go. This first palette we have is the Atelier Dore. This is the 469. Such a beautiful color combination. When I saw these, I was just so excited about the color combinations and how they look. But like I said, even though they're beautiful, you guys might already have these in your collection. So hang tight, we'll get into that. This Quint retails for $59. And I did go ahead and buy both of these on the Selfridges website. And let me just say, I ordered these on October 12th and they were at my door on October 14th. And Selfridges ships from the UK. So just to kind of clarify, these arrived in 2 days from the UK. That is Selfridges for you. They are rock stars when it comes to shipping. My Pat McGrath, the last order of the blush palettes and the little 4-pan palettes and all of that, that order shipped 2 days before the 2-week mark. So yeah, it'll be almost 3 weeks by the time I get that order that I ordered from Pat McGrath by the time it arrives at my house. Ulta always takes a week. Sephora, I used to get in 2 days. Not so much anymore. It's been like 4 and 5 days. Selfridges, fantastic. Now I do pay the $55 membership for the year, but being that I'm in this business, I don't mind paying that because I get them so fast, and it actually ends up working out for me because I can get these reviews up for you earlier than I would if I was waiting for them to come to the United States. Right now, from what I understand, they're currently only available on the Selfridges website, but if I find them in other places, of course, I will link them in the description box. So the next palette that we have in the collection is called this number is 739. This is the House of Dreams, and I'm actually wearing it on this side. This is a more purpley toned palette, and you have the silver center in this one, whereas with this one, you have the gold in the center. And so much to say about these palettes, you guys. We're going to go ahead and dive right into playing with the palettes and creating each one of the looks that I'm wearing. Then we will get into the swatches and comparisons, and then I will jump into my final thoughts. So I will see you guys then. I'm going to first start with this palette right here. This is the 739 House of Dreams. I'm going to take the Rephr number 2 brush and I'm going to go into this dark shade on the bottom. And I'm going to focus that like right here at the base of the lashes and kind of bringing it up and into the crease. Now this is a pretty dark purple and it's got a lot of pigment. Keeping most of the pigment here on the lid and then bringing some of it up and into the crease. And it's blending beautifully. Purples are hard. Like some purple formulas are just really patchy and dry. This one is not. This is really easy to work with. blending really beautifully and applying really easily. So I am happy with this one. Then I'm going to grab the BK Beauty A504, which is from the Angie collection from Hot and Flashy. And I'm going to go into this shade right here. I'm going to use that to kind of blend this out. Wow, that has a lot of pigment, y'all. Ooh, you guys, that has a lot of pigment. I got to wipe the brush off because I think I went in with too much product. So I'm just going to kind of blend those edges out with that shade. I'm not done yet, but I want to see what this shade looks like. Kind of bring that into here and kind of see if that color like shows up on my skin tone, because I don't know if it's going to. Yeah, it's not. I'm going to go back into here and I'm going to bring that into the crease and then really blend out these edges right here. But I will say, I mean, that purple was quite dark and I'm not getting any fallout. So it's working really beautifully. So I'm curious to see what this shade will look like on the lid. So I'm going to grab my Smith 253 and I'm going to grab this shade and I'm going to put it here on the lid. Now I'm going to go into the silver right in the center. And I'm going to go into it dry first. And I'm going to bring that like right. Ooh. That's a pretty silver. Ooh, that's pretty. Okay, I'm going to wipe the brush off. That shimmer goes a really long way. Wow, I got to wipe the brush off. I'm going to go back into this shade. Use that shade to kind of blend the silver in. Wow, that is so pretty. And it's such a soft silver. It's not like a super chunky formula. It's got some pigment, obviously. I mean, look at that. But it's super, super fine. Like, there is absolutely no chunk. This is super, super fine. A lot of the silvers that I have in my collection are much more chunky, and this is just absolutely beautiful. I mean, look how this is swatching. Look at that. You can see it's kind of small and like really, really, really fine. The silver that comes to mind is this one from the Glam palette from Natasha Denona. I'm going to go into this shade right here. So this is from Natasha Denona and this is from Dior. So this is just straight up like a metallic, and this is like a small, like glittery type of formula. Don't get me wrong, I love the one from Natasha Denona, but I really like the formula in this one. It's not so strong, but it gives that extra oomph. Like, they did a great job on that. Okay, so I just went ahead and put on some of the Tarte Ultra Creamy Shape Tape. And I used my rougher brush. These are coming for the holidays, and I'm obsessed with these two brushes. Holy smokes, I'm obsessed. Now that I have my concealer on, I'm going to kind of pull this look together and kind of diffuse that sharp line. I'm going to grab the BK Beauty 204 and I'm going to go into this dark purple. And I'm also going to bring some of that definition up here on the outer corner on the upper, just to make sure that it's nice and kind of dark and smoky out here. Then I'm going to grab the Rephr number 26 brush and I'm going to go into this shade right here. I am going to place this here on the lower lash line. I'm going to wipe my brush off and I'm going to go into this line and kind of diffuse it. I think I want to put a little bit of that silver on the inner corner because it's just such a beautiful shadow. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the silver shade with the Smith 253. I'm going to place a tiny bit of that on the inner corner. I hope it'll be pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of diffuse it just a little bit with a brush. So easy to apply too. Like, that's the key, is it a little bit of it goes a really long way. So I went ahead and threw on a lash. These are the Kiss Faux Mink lashes in the style Little Black Dress. So that is what I'm wearing. This is the final look using the House of Dreams palette, and this turned out really beautiful. I have a lot to say about this palette. There are some things that I'm seeing that I don't love about it, so I will get into that in my final thoughts. So that's it for the look using the House of Dreams palette. Let's go ahead and jump into the next tutorial using the Atelier Dore palette. I'm probably botching that, but you know, let's go ahead and jump into that tutorial. So let's go ahead and move on to the tutorial using this palette. This is really pretty. I'm so excited to play with these shadows. The structure of the shades are the exact same. They're just different color tones. So you have the dark shade over here on the end. You have a little bit of a lighter shade over here. So you could create the exact same look that I created with this palette in the exact same sequence and order. So just FYI, I want to go into this shade. I want to see if this shade has any depth. I don't know that it will, but I want to see if it will. So I'm going to grab that BK Beauty A504 from the Angie Hot and Flashy collaboration. And I'm going to bring that here into the crease. Well, that's giving me some pigment. It's got a very, very soft shimmer to it. I'm gonna grab my By Terry eyeliner in the shade Brown Secret. And I am gonna go right here at the base of the lashes and blend it out. Now I'm gonna take the E5 from Makeup by Mario and I'm gonna go into this dark shadow right here. And I am going to place that right over the line and just kind of build some depth. And then kind of blend it into the crease. Now I'm going to switch brushes, but using the same shadow. I'm going to switch to the A504 from BK Beauty. I'm going to bring that dark shadow like right here on the crease. Now I'm going to go into this shade right here. Ooh, that's dark. Ooh, I got to wipe that brush off. It's darker than I thought it was. Now I'm going to be wiping this, so I'm not too worried about this outer corner right here because I'm going to be wiping it off. So I'm just kind of using that space to kind of blend. These pigments are extremely pigmented, so go in super, super lightly until you kind of get used to the pigment. So I am going to grab my Smith 253 and I'm going to go into this shade right here. This is a very, very soft shimmer shadow. So it's not super, super shimmery. It's got some shimmer, but it's very, very soft and subtle. And that is to be expected from these Dior Quints. They are not super shimmery, which is a reason why a lot of people love them. Now I want to go into this shadow right here. And if it's anything like the silver and that other shadow and that other palette, I am excited. Ooh, you guys. That is so pretty. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the BK Beauty 204 and I'm gonna go back into this dark and I'm gonna kind of sharpen up this line a little bit. I went ahead and threw on some concealer. I'm gonna grab that BK Beauty 204 and I'm gonna go into this shade right here. Focus that here on this outer corner. Then I'm going to go into this shade right here. And I'm going to blend out that shadow right here. Okay, so I am back. I went ahead and just did the rest of my makeup and I will list everything that I'm wearing on my face in the description box down below in case you're curious. But this is the final look using this palette and the shape, the tones are very similar. I am noticing like out here where it's a little bit darker and stuff, it kind of mimics those tones. Obviously, the lid color is different, right? But the tones in the palette are definitely very similar, except for the gold and the silver. So lots to talk about, but I really love the way that this eyeshadow look turned out. I think it's really pretty. Didn't have any issues with the shadows. But again, I do have some issues with both of the palettes, which I will get into those in my final thoughts. But for now, that's it for the applications using these palettes. Let's go ahead and jump into the swatches, and I'm going to swatch these two palettes and also compare them to other palettes that I have that might be similar in tone. And then we will get into my final thoughts. So I will see you guys then. Okay, so now that we've made it through the swatches and comparisons, let me go ahead and get into my final thoughts. I hope that those swatches and comparisons were helpful. As you could tell, I have a lot of products in my collection that are similar to these two palettes from Dior. The one palette that I did want to mention is the Backstage palette. So this is the Universal Neutrals palette. This has a lot of similar shades to this palette. That gold shade right here in the palette is kind of similar to the gold shade in here. I noticed that as I swatched it, you kind of get the same effect. So I think if you have this palette, you definitely don't need this palette because you can definitely create similar looks with both of these. I am not super familiar with Dior Quints. I just recently started buying them within the last year. So I want to make that clear. I don't know a lot of history about them. I haven't been using them for a long period of time. As I was swatching and comparing this Backstage palette, this is the Universal Neutrals. As I was comparing it to these two palettes, what's the price increase for? These Quints are like $10 more than the Backstage palettes. The Backstage palettes have 9 shades instead of 5. The Backstage palettes have 10 grams. These Quints have 7.6 grams. So the formula is the same. Why are the Quints so much more money? Those of you out there that are more familiar with the Quints, if you could just kind of answer that question, because I'm trying to find like what makes this so much special for it being $10 more than the Backstage, because the formulas swatch and look the same and they apply the same. So whenever I've used this palette, which is one of my favorites in the Backstage, I have a lot of Backstage palettes and this one's one of my favorites. Every time I use this, which you can see I've used this a lot, but every time I use this, I get like this similar eye look. So I'm just trying to figure out why the price increase on the Quints. Is it because the packaging? Because the packaging is the only thing that I have found that's better than the Backstage. They're both plastic, but this one's just a little bit nicer, right, than this. Those are the only differences between them. So I'm just kind of curious to hear a little bit of information on that because I don't know. The other thing I also wanted to mention that I did not mention in the intro, these palettes are made in France and these have a 6-month shelf life. So I actually looked at all of my Quints that I have and they all have a 6-month shelf life. I'm not sure why. Obviously, more than likely, they're gonna last longer than 6 months, but I just wanted to point that out for those that were interested. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is this was last year's palette. So this is called 549 Golden Snow, and this palette has this gold shade in it, and it is exactly the same as this gold shade, which is really interesting. So last year's is a little bit more golden, but honestly, once you put them on the eye, they're not going to be that much different. So if you were going to buy this palette because of that gold shade, if you have last year's palette, you already have that gold shade. Here's the thing. These two shades are very similar, and I would have liked to have had something different up here, even though looking at the palette, it looks really pretty. Just the way that they arranged the shades. I mean, they look really beautiful looking down into the pan, especially with the black as the base, and then you have the silver outline. So looking down at it, it looks really beautiful. But when you're using the palette, these two shades are very, very similar, and they're a soft, like shimmering matte formula where they really look beautiful, but they're so similar. They're too similar to have in one palette for $59. Now, this Quint right here, which is this one, these kind of swatched very similar to the Tutu, which is the 769. So I feel like if you have the Tutu palette, you probably don't need this palette. You could pretty much create the same looks, and you could probably look in your collection and find a silver shadow similar to this. In fact, this Backstage palette right here has this silver. It applies exactly like this Quint, like exactly like it. Look how beautiful that silver is. That's from the Backstage. So let me swatch it next to this one right here. I mean, that is exactly the same shade. I mean, it is so beautiful. Overall, these are really beautiful palettes, but I don't really feel like they're fully necessary. I feel like you probably have these palettes over and over and over. If you've never bought the Dior Quints and you saw these and thought they were really beautiful, maybe they fit into what you like when it comes to eyeshadow, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So if you pick up these palettes, I don't think you'll be disappointed. But I really don't feel like they're fully necessary because they're similar color stories within their own range, right? If you're attracted to them and you pick them up, I don't think you'll be disappointed. But I'm not like fully in love with these. I don't know. I am. Don't get me wrong. I love the looks that I created, and all of the shadows blended beautifully. Like, I didn't have any problem with the quality. It's just that these are so similar to what we already have. So I think that's kind of my reservation is, you know, if you were looking at buying these, maybe you don't have any other Dior Quints, maybe you don't have the Backstage palette that I'm talking about, and you're thinking about getting one of these, I get it. I don't think you'll be disappointed, but if you've been on the fence, like thinking about if you want these or not, I would look at those swatches and comparisons and kind of like look into your collection and see if you have something like these already, and then kind of make your decision from there. The one thing that I can tell you about the Dior formula overall is that it is very, very soft on the eye. So they don't exaggerate texture. They don't exaggerate wrinkles. They're not super strong shadows like the Natasha Denona formula or the Pat McGrath formula. I did compare these palettes to a few of the Natasha Denona palettes that I have, and you'll notice in those swatches, there is a definite difference between the texture. The Natasha Denona's formulas are much thicker and they pack a big punch. These are just more soft, more subtle. If you're looking for something that's more soft on the eye, I don't think you'll be disappointed in these. These are really beautiful, but I truly do not feel like these are fully necessary, even though they are really pretty. Those are my overall thoughts. Sound off down below in the comment section. Let us know your thoughts on these new Quints from Dior. And if you guys have already picked these up and you have them and you've used them, share with us in the comment section down below your experience. I'm so curious to hear everyone's thoughts. So definitely share with us in the comment section down below. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in my next video. Love you. Bye.